Ethan's revenge. I was lacing up my sneakers when he walked over. Chest puffed out, arms flexed, jaw clenched like he was auditioning for a protein powder commercial. "Walk out before I embarrass you, old man," he said, loud enough for the whole gym to hear. I didn't look up, just tightened the laces on my left shoe. The rubber squeaked on the mat beneath me. The air was thick with sweat, music, and testosterone. He took another step forward. "You're not man enough for her." That's what did it. Not the volume, not the posture, not even the smug little smirk on his face. It was the way he said her, like she was a prize he'd already claimed, like I'd already lost. I just smiled. 12 years in special forces taught me patience, timing, restraint. This wasn't my battlefield. Not yet. I tied my right shoe, double-knotted it, took a slow breath. And when I looked up, the moment was already gone, for him, anyway. But let me back up. My name's Michael Reed. I'm 45. Retired military. Used to be a tactical instructor out at Fort Bragg before my knees decided they'd had enough jumping out of planes. These days, I run a private security firm out of Raleigh. Small team, mostly veterans. We don't advertise. Word of mouth only. You've either heard of us, or you haven't. I've been married to Elena for 10 years. We met when I got back from deployment in 2012. She was working as a trauma nurse, the kind who doesn't flinch at blood or broken bones. I'd taken a bullet outside Jalalabad, and she was part of the team that patched me up once I made it stateside. We clicked. Simple as that. But lately, things hadn't been simple. Elena had started training with this guy, Chase. Private sessions at a local upscale gym, 3 nights a week. I'd never cared before. I trusted her. But then her texts got shorter. Her phone, more guarded. One night, she came home wearing a hoodie I didn't recognize. Not mine. I ran a background check on Chase. Former college athlete, turned personal trainer. No record. Nothing suspicious. But something felt off. Then last week, I dropped by the gym unannounced. Just to say hi. She wasn't on the treadmill. She wasn't in the weight room. She was behind a locked door labeled staff only. When she came out, her hair was a mess. Chase followed her out a few seconds later. Neither of them looked at me. She said it was just a nutrition consult. I didn't argue. I never argue when I already know the truth. That's when I signed up for a day pass at that same gym. Walked in the next morning, calm as ever. Same shirt I wore when I passed selection. No one paid me any attention, except Chase. I knew what was coming. Guys like him are predictable, loud, impulsive, desperate to dominate. So when he stood over me that morning, puffing out his chest in front of a dozen other gym-goers, thinking he had the upper hand, he didn't realize I was already 3 steps ahead. And by the time I stood up, it was already too late. I didn't say a word when I stood up. I didn't need to. That kind of power doesn't come from barking orders or puffing your chest. It comes from knowing exactly what you're capable of and letting everyone else wonder. He flinched. Just for a second. He masked it with a smirk, but I caught it. That half step back. That twitch in his jaw. He thought I'd get loud. Make a scene. He wanted that. Needed it, even. Because loud men need noise to cover their fear. I just stared at him. Then turned my back. The room went quiet. People were watching, but pretending not to. I walked past him and picked up a towel from the bench. Wiped my face like I'd just finished a hard set. Then I left the weight room without looking back. I wasn't walking away. I was repositioning. See, when someone comes at you from the front, that's not the real attack. That's the decoy. The real hit comes from the blind side. From what you don't see, or in Chase's case, what he didn't even know I could see. The gym had security cameras, like most do. Basic systems. Motion triggered. Stored footage for 30 days. But what Chase didn't know was that I had a quiet friend on the inside. His name's Darnell. Night shift. Former Marine. Cleans the place, empties trash, does basic maintenance. Doesn't say much. Most people ignore him. But I trained Darnell 10 years ago. He owes me. And when I called in that favor, he didn't ask questions. The night before I confronted Chase, Darnell pulled the last 2 weeks of footage. Office hallway. Staff lounge. That locked door. He left the drive for me inside a vending machine bag labeled protein mix. I picked it up on my way out that morning. At home, I watched the clips in silence. Elena. Chase. Same hallway. Same room. Again and again. What got me wasn't what they did. I'd already suspected that. What got me was the way she looked at him. Not like a fling. Not like someone who'd made a mistake. There was familiarity, comfort, like I'd already been erased. I didn't yell. I didn't confront her. I made dinner. We ate in silence. She said she was tired. I said I understood. After she went to bed, I stayed up and copied the footage to a secure drive. One for my lawyer, one for backup, one just for me. I labeled the folder closure, then encrypted it. The next day, I returned to the gym. Signed up for a full membership. Not because I wanted to work out, but because you don't strike on emotion. You wait. You watch. And when the time is right, you finish what they started. Quietly. Precisely. I didn't change my routine. That's how you keep your enemy blind, by doing exactly what they expect. I started coming to the gym at 6 a.m. 3 days a week. Legs on Monday. Chest on Wednesday. Back and core on Friday. I didn't look at Chase. I didn't speak to him. I was polite to the front desk. Kept my headphones in. Focused. Focus draws no suspicion. But I saw everything. I logged his schedule. Who he trained. When he showed up. When he left. I noted how he'd linger after hours with certain clients. Especially Elena. She didn't know I was there. I made sure of that. I used a different entrance. Kept my workouts short. Disappeared before she arrived. At home, I played my role. I cooked. I cleaned. I kept our conversations light and forgettable. She stayed glued to her phone more often than not, texting with the screen tilted away. I didn't ask who. One night she said she had a late session. Nutrition coaching. I nodded. Said, be safe. She smiled like she believed I still believed her. She had no idea I'd already installed tracking software on her car. Another favor from a former colleague. Legal gray area, sure. But not illegal. Not yet. At 9:14 p.m., her car was parked behind the gym. At 10:06, it was still there. At 10:39, it moved again, straight to a residential address I didn't recognize. I looked it up. Chase's condo. Next day, I arrived at the gym early. Brought a different bag, one that didn't have gym clothes inside. Darnell met me in the back hallway. Said no one had touched the cameras. The footage was still clean. He looked nervous. Asked if I planned to do something stupid. I told him no. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here for documentation. See, Chase had a side hustle. Offered premium transformation programs outside gym hours. Mostly cash. No paperwork. A few NDA forms printed off Google Docs to keep himself safe. Problem was, he used the gym as his storefront. Stored personal client data on company equipment. Broke 3 major policies just by logging payments through the gym's terminal. Darnell had access to all of it. He gave me everything. Every file. Every name. Every payment. Chase thought he was slick. That the rules didn't apply to him. That because he had abs and a jawline, he could do whatever he wanted. He forgot that real strength isn't loud. It's patient. Disciplined. Strategic. Back home, I created a timeline. Each payment. Each after-hours visit. Each appearance Elena made at the condo. I cross-referenced it with footage. With text I'd quietly mirrored from her synced laptop. And I built the case. Not for a court. Not even for a lawyer. For me. So when it was time to move, there'd be no emotion left. Only precision. Only truth. And the truth was more powerful than anything he could lift. I waited 6 more days. Not because I needed more evidence. I had enough to sync them both. Text threads, location logs, security footage, financial documents tied to off-the-record training sessions. Everything lined up. But this wasn't about exposure. This was about control. People like Chase feed off chaos. They escalate. They want shouting matches, slammed doors, broken glass. That's how they win, by dragging you into a fight you didn't start. So I gave him nothing. Just silence. Cold, steady, unshakable silence. The morning it started, I made Elena breakfast. Eggs, toast, black coffee. Exactly how she liked it when we were still real. She sat across from me in sweatpants in silence, scrolling through her phone with a faint smile that had nothing to do with me. I asked if she had any plans that evening. She said Chase wanted to adjust her macros. Said it like it was a doctor's appointment. I nodded once. Text me when you're done, I said. She mumbled that she would. By 9:47 p.m., her car was at his place again. Same spot. Same time. Like clockwork. I didn't follow. I didn't drive past. I just watched the tracker and waited. At 10:12, I sent her a single text. I left something for you on the kitchen counter. You should look at it when you get home. That was it. I turned off my phone and went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, she was already gone. No note. No message. The envelope I left, still sitting untouched on the counter. Inside was a printed itinerary. 10 pages. Timestamps. Photos. Screenshots. A full breakdown of her past 3 months. I didn't include any accusations. Only facts. The silence that followed lasted 2 days. Then came the knock at the office. Elena, pale, shaking, said she needed to talk. Said she was confused. I listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't blink. When she finished spinning her version, emotional distance, misunderstanding, poor choices, I asked one question. Did he promise you anything? She didn't answer. That was my answer. I stood up. Told her I needed time. Told her not to contact me until I reached out. She cried. Said she never meant to hurt me. I nodded. Because whether she meant it or not didn't change what she did. That night, I met with my lawyer. Told him to draft a clean separation. No drama. No drawn-out battles. We'd split assets equally, no alimony. I wasn't interested in dragging this through court. I was interested in being free. But before I left it all behind, there was one more move to make. The part Chase never saw coming. The part that wasn't about Elena at all. Because while he was busy chasing what he thought he'd stolen from me, he had no idea I'd already taken something from him. And now, it was time to pull that trigger. Quietly. Chase had a side business. He just didn't know it was mine. 6 months before all this started, I bought into a local LLC that handled small-scale fitness consulting and liability insurance audits. Quiet work. Mostly paperwork. It was a shell company, one of many that quietly serviced gyms around the state. Background checks. Compliance reports. Things owners ignore until it's too late. Chase's gym was one of our clients. I'd kept that connection buried. Different name. Different address. Legal. Clean, untouchable. I wasn't looking to ruin anyone back then. I just believed in covering my bases. Now, that investment had a use. A month ago, Chase had submitted falsified liability waivers for his private clients. Non-members. Mostly women. The ones he trained off books. Some paid cash. Some were comps. Women he was helping out. Elena was one of them. Technically, they weren't covered under the gym's insurance. Which meant if anything happened to them during those sessions, anything at all, the gym was exposed. And Chase? He was personally liable. I had it all in writing. Contracts. Footage. Statements. All time-stamped. Verified. Quietly assembled over weeks. At 6:30 a.m. Friday, I showed up at the gym. Not to work out. Not to confront. Just to observe. He was already there, laughing with a new client. Doing that thing with his arms again. Posturing. The room loved him. That was the problem. Chase had always performed for the room. That's why he underestimated men like me. I left a sealed envelope with the front desk. To be opened by Chase Mercer only. Inside was a single-page letter. No threats. Just facts. A list of names. Training dates. Waiver violations. And a quiet reminder that falsifying documentation tied to commercial liability was a prosecutable offense. At the bottom, a suggestion. Step down quietly. Walk away clean. Or this goes to the state licensing board Monday morning. No signature. Just the logo of the LLC he'd never heard of until now. By noon, I got a call from Darnell. Chase had left early. Told staff he wasn't feeling well. Didn't reschedule his evening sessions. At 4 p.m., the gym's owner received an anonymous packet. Same information, different formatting. Just enough to make Chase radioactive. At 6:15, Elena texted. He says he's being targeted. He thinks it's you. I didn't respond. Because the moment you confirm something like that, you give it power. And power's something I only use when necessary. By Monday morning, Chase's name was off the trainer board. His locker emptied. His private sessions canceled indefinitely. No police. No lawsuits. No confrontations. Just silence. Effective. Precise. Permanent. He tried to replace me. Thought it was just about a woman. Just about ego. He didn't understand. This was never about her. This was about principle. And the moment he crossed that line, he became just another problem to be solved. Quietly. The morning after Chase disappeared from the gym, Elena showed up at my office. No warning. No call. Just the sound of her voice in the front room, asking my assistant if I was in. I had her wait. Not because I needed time to prepare, but because silence builds pressure. And people always talk more when you make them sit with their guilt. 5 minutes later, I opened the door and nodded for her to come in. She looked smaller than I remembered, less certain. Her confidence, the casual arrogance that had built over months, was cracked. She said she didn't understand what was happening. Said Chase was in trouble, and people were blaming her, too. Said the gym had asked her not to come in until things were sorted. I listened, didn't interrupt, didn't offer comfort. When she finally asked if I was involved, I looked her in the eye and asked one question. What would you do if I was? She couldn't answer. That silence was louder than any admission. I didn't tell her about the documents, or the footage, or the leverage Chase never saw coming. I didn't need to, because by now, she understood something critical. The man she thought she could deceive was never confused. He was just waiting. She asked if there was still a way to fix things. Not with Chase. With me. I told her there wasn't. Not because I hated her, but because trust, once broken that cleanly, doesn't grow back. Not with time. Not with therapy. Not even with regret. I'd already signed the separation paperwork. Already met with my attorney. Already started the process of reconfiguring my life, without the weight of lies wrapped in good intentions. I told her I'd be moving out that week. The house was hers. I didn't want it. Too many echoes. She offered to fight for us. I declined. She cried. Said I was being cold. That I'd changed. I hadn't. What changed was my willingness to tolerate dishonesty wrapped in softness. She asked what she should do now. I said that wasn't my problem anymore. The next day, I cleared my things from the house. Took only what I needed, essentials, tools, one photograph of my dad from basic training. Left everything else behind. Let her have the furniture, the wedding album, even the dog, though he followed me to the car and whined when I got in. That part hurt. But some cuts need to be clean. I rented a small cabin outside the city. No neighbors. No noise. Just quiet and the comfort of knowing no one was lying within my walls. I didn't change my number, but I stopped answering calls that came from her. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. And sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's precision. People think endings come with explosions, fights, broken glass, screaming matches that leave everything scorched. But sometimes endings are quieter than that. Slower. Like watching a storm from a distance, knowing it already passed, and all that's left is cleanup. 3 days after I moved out, Elena sent me a message. It said, "We should talk." I didn't reply, because I knew what she wanted. Not reconciliation. Not truth. She wanted relief. She wanted to know the damage wasn't permanent. That there was still some version of her that could walk away from this untouched. But people don't walk away from consequences. Not really. Not when they've spent months building their own collapse one lie at a time. I focused on what mattered. The business needed restructuring. I promoted one of the younger guys, ex-Navy, steady under pressure, to manage field ops. I stepped back into strategy. It fit better. I'd spent too long micromanaging everything. Too long believing control was the same thing as security. It wasn't. At the cabin, I got used to silence again. No footsteps in the hallway. No phone lighting up at midnight. No looking over my shoulder wondering what she was hiding behind her soft smile. I slept better than I had in years. But closure doesn't arrive neatly packaged. It shows up in fragments. Like the email I got from the gym's regional manager. He wanted to thank me for bringing irregularities to our attention. Said Chase had been discreetly let go. Said Elena had been politely asked to take her business elsewhere. They didn't ask for details. They already knew enough. A few days later, a mutual friend called. Said Chase had tried starting his own training program, but couldn't find a single gym to back him. Word spreads fast when liability's involved. The clients he used to brag about? Gone. The women who flirted with him between sets? Moved on. His reputation was clean on paper. But in business, whispers carry further than headlines. Elena, I heard, had moved back in with her sister. She'd deleted most of her social media. Went quiet for a while. Good. It's easier to start over when you stop trying to control the narrative. Some part of me wondered if she really believed Chase was the future, or if he was just a convenient way to feel something new when the marriage felt too steady. Didn't matter. By then, I'd stopped asking why. Some betrayals don't come with a reason, just a pattern, a repetition of quiet withdrawals until one day, everything's empty and no one wants to admit who did the draining. But I wasn't bitter. I'd already won. Not because she hurt. Not because Chase vanished. But because I came out clean. Unbroken. And because I knew something they never understood. Silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's a warning. I thought I was done with them. I really did. The house was behind me. The paperwork signed. The man who tried to replace me neutralized. The silence reclaimed. But closure has a way of stretching out longer than expected. One night, I got a knock at the cabin. Not late, just after sunset. The dog barked once, then quieted. He always knew when it wasn't a threat. I opened the door. It was Owen, Elena's brother. Clean cut, always polite, the kind of man who measured his words carefully. He didn't ask to come in. Just stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets like he was bracing for impact. Said he just wanted to talk. I let him. He didn't come to defend her. He came to explain. Not for her sake, for mine. Said she'd been unraveling for longer than I realized. That the affair wasn't the beginning of the end. It was just the first thing I saw. Said their parents were the same way. Secrets wrapped in soft smiles. Affairs hidden beneath girls' weekends. Promises replaced with performance. He said Elena never learned how to be honest without expecting punishment. I didn't say much. Not because I didn't care, but because I already understood. She was trained for survival, not connection. And when she found someone who didn't play games, who didn't raise his voice or threaten or cheat, she didn't know what to do with that. So she sabotaged it. Some people drown in still water. They need waves to feel alive. I thanked him for telling me. He nodded, said he figured I'd want the truth, even if it came late. He left the same way he came. Quiet, respectful, heavy with disappointment that wasn't his to carry. The next morning, there was a letter in the mailbox. No return address. Just handwriting I knew too well. She wrote that she was sorry, that she wasn't looking for forgiveness, just understanding. Said Chase was never the plan. Said she missed the sound of silence when I was in the house. That's what stuck with me. Not the apology, not the regret, but the way she missed what she once treated as absence. Turns out, the quiet wasn't what pushed her away. It's what made her feel exposed. Because when things go still, you start hearing your own thoughts. And not everyone can survive that. I didn't respond. Not because I hated her, but because she already knew everything I would have said. And if she didn't, then I'd already been speaking to a version of her that never truly existed. I folded the letter, put it in the fire, and watched it turn to ash. There's no satisfaction in revenge, just the discipline of restraint. And sometimes, letting them hear only the sound of their own choices is the only justice they'll ever truly understand. A few weeks passed. Long walks with the dog. Cold mornings, black coffee, radio off. I didn't speak unless spoken to. I didn't chase closure. I let it come at its own pace. The quiet wasn't empty. It was earned. One morning, my attorney called. Said there was a new development. Chase had tried to file a defamation claim. Claimed malicious interference with business. He had no idea how badly he'd miscalculated. My lawyer asked if I wanted to counter. Sue for damages. Go public with the evidence. I said no. Let him twist. Because courtrooms don't scare guys like Chase. But irrelevance does. The gym didn't want his name mentioned again. Their silence cost him more than my words ever could. And when no one takes your calls, when your name's no longer on the schedule, and when people who once laughed at your jokes now avoid your eyes, that's worse than losing. It's vanishing. And Elena? She went quiet again, too. Not out of fear. Out of exhaustion. She stopped reaching out. Probably realized by now that I wasn't trying to win. I was never in a competition. I was removing myself from one. She still lived in the house. I let her keep it. Not as a gift, but as a reminder. Every wall, every room. She'd walk through it daily knowing what she gave up for nothing. Chase never loved her. He just liked winning. And when there was nothing left to win, he left too. Poetic. People talk about forgiveness like it's some grand release. Like if you can find it, the weight disappears. But I wasn't carrying hate. I was carrying clarity. Forgiveness isn't about pretending it didn't happen. It's about making peace with the fact that it did, and still choosing not to look back. That month, I got a call from the gym owner. Not corporate, local. A woman named Natalie. We'd never officially met. She said she knew it was me, that I'd handled it clean. Said if I ever wanted a favor, a reference, or a contract, I had one. I told her I wasn't looking for opportunities. She said, "That's why you'll always deserve them." Then she hung up. That call stayed with me, not because I needed validation, but because for once, someone recognized that restraint takes more strength than retaliation ever will. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just ended something. I'd started something else. A life built on my own terms. No surveillance. No suspicion. No waiting for the floor to drop out. Just calm. Honest calm. And when you've lived in chaos long enough, peace isn't boring. It's radical. That night, I poured a drink. Sat by the window. Watched the moonlight settle over the tree line. No texts. No calls. No apologies left to dodge. Just the silence I'd earned, whispering a simple truth. You don't always win by fighting back. Sometimes, you win by walking away and never needing to return. 6 months passed. I didn't mark the date. Didn't light a candle or toast to survival. It wasn't that kind of milestone. But I knew the distance. Not in time, but in weight. The heaviness that used to sit in my chest, gone. The habits of watching every glance, every phone flick, every schedule change, replaced with stillness. That's how I knew I'd healed. Not when the pain stopped, but when I stopped needing answers. I still kept the files, the footage, the records, tucked away in a secure drive labeled archive. Not for revenge, not for court, just for the memory of what I survived quietly. One morning, I got a message from a man I didn't know. Said he'd found my name through a mutual veteran contact. Said his wife had been training with Chase. Said something felt off. I didn't offer a lecture. I didn't tell him what to do. I just asked him what his gut told him and whether he was listening to it. He was silent for a while. Then he said, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to believe it. I told him that's where every man gets hurt. Not when the betrayal happens, but when he decides silence equals safety. He thanked me. Said he'd figure it out. I wished him luck. And I meant it. See, I never wanted to be the guy who exposed people. That wasn't the goal. I wasn't chasing justice. I was defending my own ground and walking away when it was clean. But life has a way of looping back to you when you least expect it. Later that month, I met someone. Not through apps. Not through setups. Just two people reaching for the same bag of coffee at the store. Simple. Unforced. She asked what I did. I told her I worked in private security. She nodded and said, that makes sense. I asked why. She said, you carry yourself like someone who doesn't talk unless it matters. That stopped me. Because that's exactly what I'd become. Not hard. Not closed off. Just intentional. We talked a while. Went out a few times. No expectations. No speed. She asked about my past, eventually. I told her the truth. Not all the details. Just the important parts. That I'd been lied to. But I never lost my footing. That someone tried to break what I'd built. But I didn't break. And that the quiet she saw in me wasn't emptiness. It was earned. She smiled and said, good. I don't trust loud men anyway. Maybe it becomes something. Maybe it doesn't. But that's not the point. The point is, I stood still while everything shook. And when the noise cleared, I was still here. Not angry. Not bitter. Just better. And in the end, some men don't burn bridges. They wait for them to rot. Then they build something stronger. Out of silence. Out of scars. Out of truth. Something that no one can touch again. Not without permission. Not without consequence. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.